Michael Jordan said he was troubled by the growing violence between African Americans and police officers in this country. On Wednesday, MJ told ESPN's The Undefeated he will donate $1 million each to the Institute for Community Police Relations and the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. Jordan said he's making the donations to foster greater understanding, positive change, and create a more peaceful world. Here's a part of Jordan's statement. Quote, I am saddened and frustrated by the divisive rhetoric and racial tensions that seem to be getting worse as of late. I know this country is better than that, and I can no longer stay silent. We need to find solutions that ensure people of color receive fair and equal treatment, that police officers who put their lives on the line every day to protect us all are respected and supported. The problems we face didn't happen overnight, and they won't be solved tomorrow. But if we all work together, we can foster greater understanding, positive change, and create a more peaceful world for ourselves, our children, our families, and our communities. Here's Carmelo Anthony on Jordan speaking up.
I thought it was brilliant and about time, you know, that he stepped up, said what he said, because he's, at the end of the day, amongst us, he is our face. I mean, he's a African-American, a very powerful African-American. So for him to step up in the midst of these times right now, it was very big on his behalf, and not also just step up. You know, it's not always about money and giving back, but for him to step up and put his money where his mouth at, I mean, the timing was perfect.
Stephen A., is Jordan taking too much heat for what he did?
I believe he is. You know, first of all, as a black man, would I have liked to have heard Jordan speak up more on issues a la Jim Brown, Bill Russell, Muhammad Ali, Kurt Flood, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, etc.? Of course. When you are a member of a community that's widely recognized as being a bit disenfranchised and who feels, by and large, most of the time, relatively voiceless, to some degree, even in this day and age, of course you want somebody of Michael Jordan's stature to speak, to be a bit more loquacious and outspoken about issues. But it's one thing to desire that he does those things and be those things. It's another thing entirely to engage in condemnation directly against him because you feel he hasn't, ignoring so many other things that he has done. I have always been told throughout the years, and to some degree, I've seen Michael Jordan be incredibly charitable, not just with his time, not just with his money, but also with providing the appropriate face to what you want someone of his stature to be about. Michael Jordan surrounds himself with individuals who are educated, who are intelligent, who are accomplished in their own professions, who also happen to be black. And there's a certain level, there's a certain requirement that he will have in terms of you putting your feet on the ground, pounding the pavement, and doing the things necessary to elevate yourself to another level. It's similar to the kind of thing that Kobe alluded to when he wrote that letter last week for the Players Tribune. And he talked about not necessarily just giving to people and playing the role of enabler, but instead putting them in positions so they can ultimately carry themselves, because you're not doing them favors when you're just handing stuff to folks without them having to position themselves to really work for it, develop a skill, and take themselves to another level. These are the kind of things I think need to be looked upon and thought about and elocuted when talking about Michael Jordan. I look at a man that not only was the greatest player in the world, I looked at how he dressed, I looked at how he carried himself, I looked at how he projected, because what I saw wasn't just an individual who was trying to look good or floss money or do something like that. I looked at Michael Jordan as an individual that was saying, this is what they taught me works in order to elevate myself to another level in the world of corporate America and beyond, which is what we're trying to do with our community. So look at me, to some degree, albeit, as an example of some of the things that you could do along the way. I look at a guy like Kobe. I look at a guy like LeBron James. I look at D. Wade and all of these other guys, you know, with the fashion statements and all of this stuff. And LeBron of being having a business acumen that he has. And I see individuals that took it to another level. What Jordan had to fight through in the 80s, they didn't have to fight through at the turn of the millennium. He facilitated Melo and LeBron and D. Wade and others ultimately becoming what they became, him and Magic Johnson. Because when we see Magic Johnson, we thought Showtime in the 80s. Now we see the businessman. What the level of reverence that we should have for these individuals, there are no bounds to the words that I can express to thank them sincerely for all they've meant for our community. And when you see their good, there's no question that there are things they could have done better. But when you see their good, it so far outweighs the negative that on a day like yesterday, when the man announces what he has done, I felt not bad or negative towards anybody. I just found myself asking, why would we feel the need to sit there and look at him and say, about time? I understand that coming from pundits in the newspapers and beyond. I saw a really good column about it in the New York Daily News. But if you are a black man, how on that day yesterday could you say that about him?
Michael Jordan is, no one's ever been better at, no one's ever been as good at anything as Michael Jordan was at basketball. Like, he's the great, it's, you know, indescribable how great he was. And kids who didn't grow up in that era will never even know, even though the statistical record he left behind also proves it, right? He was amazing. And I'm going to tell you something my late great brother Sam used to say. The time to criticize the fat person is not when they're getting back from the gym with the sweaty wristbands, right? I know what you mean when you say that, look, on this day, after he just made this statement and gave $1 million or $2 million altogether and tried to do it in a way that seems, at least on the surface, as a kind of unifying thing, now is when you criticize him? It's tough to find fault, really, with anything Jordan wrote or even with the way he allocated the money. And I saw Kevin Blackistone have a...
I saw it, too.
Yeah, and the headline was basically Blackistone telling Jordan how he should spend his money. Why don't you give $1 million to Black Lives Matter? And my first thought was, and Kevin, my guy from around the horn back in the day, I love Kevin Blackistone. My first thought is, why do you have your hands in Michael Jordan's pocket? Let him, like, he's... what's it? But then I watched it, and Blackistone went ham. I highly suggest
everybody see it.
Yeah, you got to watch this video. I mean, he
Kevin
went
Blackistone around the horn yesterday.
Whew.
Yes.
There's just this feeling with Jordan. This is the best way I could describe it. Not to criticize the fat person. They're coming back from the gym. The wristbands are sweaty. There's just this feeling when you read it, like, boy, who could criticize what he wrote or what he did? It's impossible. And then you step back and you go, maybe that's why I have this funny feeling. Because I can't exactly, Blackistone did a very good job of figuring it out, but I couldn't articulate to myself what gave me a kind of a funny feeling. And I guess that's what it was. That with Michael Jordan, you get the sense that no one could ever be offended. You know, my reaction to the headline about Blackistone originally was, who could be offended by what Jordan said or did? And then yeah, that's right. You can't be offended by what he said or did, I guess. And that's what the issue is. It feels like you're dealing with a professional politician in Jordan. And this is, though he has a lofty status, and he has a major impact in the business world, I understand, and partly as a result, a major cultural impact, you still get the feeling that his response, when you watch Carmelo, you get the feeling that his response is a human and compassionate response, a real response. And with Jordan, you get the feeling like it's still somehow political, even in its apolitical nature. It still feels like it's too clean, like no one could possibly take exception, and that's the point.
A friend of mine, he's a DEA agent. He wrote something. Just want to read this to you for a quick second, because this is relevant to what we're talking about. He said, MJ and others speaking up or throwing money at the problem isn't the issue. The law protects the PD officers, police department officers, for what ultimately in some cases, amounts to murder, and that has to change. He's not calling all officers murderers. He's not doing anything like that. He's saying that in cases when that has taken place, which has basically fueled Black Lives Matters and other things, he said the law has to change. The reason I bring that up is because it's incredibly important to know that when you saw Blackstone yesterday going ham and going in, and all of his points were salient. If you know anything about Kevin Blackstone, there's nothing but respect. The man's a columnist, Dallas Morning News for years. The man is phenomenal at a lot of different things. He's a good man. But the reason I bring up and why I respectfully disagree, even though I'm not disagreeing with any of his points, you're using the past to get on Michael Jordan now about what he should have done. No matter what way we want to slice it, people are looking at what Jordan didn't do in the past. But had Jordan done those things in the past, he wouldn't be the Jordan he is now in all likelihood, and therefore wouldn't be in a position to provoke change and bring attention to things now the way that he can. You make that choice. It was a different time, and everybody couldn't be Allen.
Just like partly as a result of social media and the democratization of media as a result, there's now an atmosphere, there's now a climate that allows Carmelo Anthony and LeBron James and Chris Paul and others and Dwayne Wade and others to take kind of this public righteous stand.
Yes.
In Jordan's time, the circumstances were not as conducive to it. So if he wanted to get to this level, he had to play ball in a sense.
I have a question for you. Was the criticism based on the message that it was inauthentic and somehow some political or business motives, or more the timing, that it was too late?
I think it was a combination of both. I think that equally, it's the fact that people feel he should have stepped up a long time ago. And to some degree, because of what Max articulated, how it just seemed so safe. Because how could either side disagree with anything that he had to say? There are some critics that are going to look at it that way in terms of having a problem with it. Here's why they'll have a problem with it. They'll have a problem with it because they'll say, if nobody has a problem with what you're saying, then what risk have you really taken? And if you're not willing to take that risk, why can't you? You're set for life, blah, 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 blah. And I'm saying everyone isn't meant to articulate and elocute their points of view. Everybody doesn't have that gift. Everybody doesn't have that comfort level. Jordan may very well be very, very comfortable working behind the scenes and making things happen that way. Some people swear that's what he's done. Someone like Oprah was comfortable doing both. Oprah put her money where her mouth was, but she wasn't afraid to put her mouth where her money was. And so because of that, everybody's different. In the end, ultimately, what we must grow as a community, in my opinion, to ask ourselves is this question. Are you an asset or are you a liability? Are you making a contribution or are you not? If you are making a contribution and you are an asset, what's the moaning about?
So in other words, if you're making a contribution, then the criticism shouldn't be how much of a contribution you're making.
Right.
The fact is you're on the plus side of the ledger.
You're on the plus side of the ledger.
I like that, and that's my basic reaction to what Jordan did, and yet I get what Blackstone is talking about, and I understand that funny feeling. It's very difficult to go through life on the level that Jordan is going through life and seemingly not offend anybody. It doesn't feel genuine. And there's something about Jordan, who was the most authentic player, who, I mean, like, he was himself, but off the court that feels, that felt less authentic than some of the other people you mentioned, certainly during the 60s and early 70s when the climate was much different.
But hindsight is always easy. You know, listen, we're very good at telling people what they should have done after they've done something. Maybe if somebody had come to Jordan and others and made specific suggestions prior to that, something else might have transpired.
You know what the other problem is, though? He followed, when you really talk about the psychology of this country, he followed Muhammad Ali. Like the next icon on the level of Ali, not that anyone's on Ali's level, but on a global level like that, apologies to Bird and Magic and everybody else, you know, was Michael Jordan. He was really the next Ali when you think about it in a global way. And that's a tough act to follow. I mean, because Ali was the polar opposite.
That's right. But everybody ain't meant to lead. especially in that particular situation. You lead in your comfort zone. It's far more difficult to do it when you're away from your comfort zone.
Of course, and speaking of assets, no one more powerful than Michael Jordan. So even though it's now, we're happy he's behind it, and hopefully this will provoke some change. When we come back to the diamond we go. The Yankees traded Aroldis Chapman to the Cubs. What is going on in the Boogie Down Bronx? More First Take in a moment. Stay here.
I'm glad to be here.
Yes, year 2 for us. You are in your sophomore campaign, of course, here as head coach of the team. So you guys get the deal with Ryan Fitzpatrick, a 1-year deal, but you said you're not opposed to having 4 quarterbacks on your roster. So it's 1 year with Fitz. So what's the expectation for him?
Well, to come in hopefully and do better than he did last year, because we didn't make the playoffs. As an offense, we got to get better. As a defense, we got to get better. But there was great chemistry, and he led us to have 10 wins this year. We got to try to get more than that to get in the playoffs.
Speak to me specifically when you say the defense has to get better. Explain.
So we busted some assignments last year. We gave up some cheap touchdowns, and we got to get better at that. Obviously, our tackling has to get better. It wasn't better every game there, and we got to learn to work together schematically.
As you bring up tackling, how about offensive tackles for a second? Like, this is something that's somehow underreported, I feel like, right? You got Clady in for DeBrickashaw Ferguson. If Clady is healthy, you got a beast on the line. But that's a big if to be plugging in for blindside protection, Coach. What's your expectation?
Well, he's healthy, so, you know, coming in, we knew what we had when we got him. We replaced a good guy with another good guy. You know, we love Brick and we love Ryan, and he continues to get better day by day. He's healthy. We're just fine at that position.
What percentage of his old self do you feel like he is?
He's probably at 90% right now.
That's a pretty good player.
Yeah. Jason Morrow, I mean, I saw some promise a couple of years back. He was out last season with a shoulder injury. How's he looking thus far, and what you think you're going to get from the tight end spot, considering what you didn't get last year with him out?
Well, Jay's being healthy. I'm glad to have him out here running around right now. He's competing. We got a bunch of guys at that position that's competing right now. Kellen's our #1. Tough blocker. Jace is coming in there. He's picking up the blocking very well. We all know he runs routes and catches the ball. He just has to stay healthy.
If you had to pinpoint one particular reason of all the issues that you had last year, you still ended up finishing 10-6. If you had to pinpoint one reason as to why you guys didn't make the playoffs, what would it be?
I don't think we realized how good we were until maybe 3/4 of the way through the season. I thought it was just belief and trust. And as we got to know each other and got to trust each other, and they got to trust each other on the field, they started playing better. By that time, we've blown too many ball games.
But what happened in the last game against Buffalo then?
Oh, they just beat us. I mean, they beat us. They came out and played better than us. We don't have any excuses for that. They beat us flat out.
How do you prepare your team to face that situation? It doesn't look like anyone's going to run away with the AFC East. So it's the last game of the season again. Win and you're in. How does Coach make sure that his team is the team that's the best team on that day this season?
Well, hopefully we can get in before the last game, and if so, you know, we learn from last year's mistakes. We understand what we did wrong. Hopefully we matured in a year, and if it comes down to that, I think we got enough leaders on this team to carry us through.
Yeah, Coach, you said your team didn't realize how good they were, and you mentioned that you wanted to have a senior council of leadership. Is that part of it that could help you take the next step, the leadership issue?
That's part of it. I mean, it's not so much on the field as it is off the field, doing the right things and picking each other up when they get down, and the older guys have to step up and do that, and I think you need that in every locker room.
Who is the leader in the locker room?
We have a bunch of them right now. I mean, we have Mangold, you got Marshall, you got Decker, you got Revis, you got David Harris, you got Fitz, you got Gino. Forte came and added some. Clady added some. So we have a bunch of guys right now speaking up.
Talking about Forte and Clady, you also brought in McClendon in the middle on defense. Of the guys you brought in, of all the guys you brought in, who do you look at and go, that could be the pivotal guy, that could be the impact guy?
Well, right now, I think it's between Clady and McClendon. I mean, McClendon's so underrated. We lost a good player, and we got a good player, and he can play up and down the line of scrimmage, and when Ryan's healthy, he can man the left side pretty good, so I think both of those guys are pivotal players.
Is McClendon still taking ballet lessons? I heard he was taking ballet lessons when he was with the Steelers. Is he still doing that now, Coach?
I don't think he's doing that now, but he gave up his tutu.
You know, let me get back to oh my goodness, let me get back to Ryan Fitzpatrick, because he's here now, but it took him a while to get here. How concerned were you that he wouldn't be here? How confident are you, or were you, that this team would be fine no matter what happened?
Well, like I said before, if he got here and got hurt, we would have to play without him. So we were preparing. As the season gets near, you got to start planning to play with who's here and not who's not here. So we felt Gino made some good strides in the spring, and he was taking some reps. We hadn't put the pads on yet or done anything, but if Fitz goes down tomorrow, we're going to have to play with the guys we have here. So we were more or less waiting on a decision one way or the other, ready to move on or ready to have them back. But clarity was one thing that the guys in the locker room probably needed. So I think we were ready to move on either way.
I remember reading a quote where Geno Smith said he was playing for all 32 teams. Last time I checked, he plays for the New York Jets. Any issue with that quote whatsoever?
No, no issue at all. No issue at all. I think every player on every team, when you're auditioning and you're playing for your team, at some point you become a free agent. You're playing for everybody else, too. So that's normal.
Okay.
Boy, way to diffuse that, Coach. I thought he had you.
Not at all. Just asking the question. Just asking the question.
Year 2, what are you preaching?
Consistency, leadership, getting on each other, chemistry, big-time chemistry, and we're trying to get that accomplished this
A lot of noise has been made about Darrelle Revis from the standpoint he still had a pretty good year, but you hear people speculating that he lost a step. We bring up what happened against DeAndre Hopkins, even though he got targeted 12 times. He had just 5 receptions, but it was 418 yards in that particular loss to the Houston Texans. What did you see from Darrelle Revis last year? What are you seeing from him now? How do you feel?
I feel great. We see the same great player we had. He got beat on the one deep ball against DeAndre, but everybody gets beat. And as much as he plays man and man's that side of the field, you know, anybody complaining about him probably doesn't have him right now. If he went on the market right now, I'm pretty sure 31 teams will take him.
I mean, if they're targeting him, he had 5 interceptions last year, only 2 the year before. That tells me they think he did lose a step. They're targeting him more. That might work out for you, Coach. You come away with the ball a little bit more.
I don't know if they targeted him more. I think it's a matter of reading coverages and things we put him in that put him in those situations to throw the ball at him. But if that's the case, I'm happy they do it.
What about the loss of Antonio Cromartie? He's gone now. You're taking screen. You're taking him from the slot, putting him to the outside, if I remember correctly. Talk to me about what you feel and how you feel about your secondary outside of Darrelle Revis.
Outside of Revis, I think our safeties are fine with Gilchrist and Calvin Pryor and Rontez stepping up in there. But the right corner spot between Buster and Marcus Williams and D. Milner right now, I think is a great competition right there. We lost a lot of veteran leadership with Cromartie right there. You know, it's tough being a number 2 corner when you have a great guy on the other side of you. You know, you're going to get about 25 passes almost every other game. So these guys got to develop mental toughness, and they got to stay out there, and I think they're doing that right now.
D. Milner, I haven't heard that name in quite a long time. I mean, you know, a couple of years ago, I mean, they were talking about him being a rookie and still being the number 1 corner. That's how small the position was, and then you got the Revis and Cromartie in here. How's he coming along? How's Milner coming along? How you feeling about him compared to whatever else you have?
Well, D's healthy right now. That's the biggest thing. It's the first time we really getting a chance to look at D. He was hurt all last year when we had him. Him coming in right now, being healthy and playing faster, and first time back in the scheme and having pads on right now, we're excited to see what he can do. But he's right there in competition with Buster and Marcus.
Does Forte diversify the offense in a way that was necessary? I mean, you're also replacing a very productive guy at that position, but maybe Forte a little more versatile. Is that the idea with him, to diversify the attack a little bit?
It is. He can do all 3. I know we lost Ivory. He was a great back. We think we got a great back in Forte, so he can flex out, and he's probably got a tad bit better running route skills than Ivory does. Not taking away anything from Ivory because he's a great player, but we think Matt can diversify some of the things we do.
So given that you keep replacing these good players with players who may be even more useful in the upcoming season, given the fact that you guys didn't realize how good you were until later in the season, and maybe that was the difference, how does Coach right now impress upon these guys how good they are, right? Like, how do you do that in preseason heading into the season so you can hit that stride at the earliest point?
Well, we got to play situational football better. We can't panic, and we got to understand we put them in situations thousands of times, so when they get in them in games, it'll be easy. There won't be any panic. Everybody will be on the same page. There's a confidence level there. Haven't been together for a year, which they weren't last year. Some of that was chemistry. So having been together for a year and going through the same things all the time and having everybody here at camp at the same time, I think that'll help us.
Pressure to make the playoffs this year?
No pressure. We're trying to make it every year. I mean, we're trying to make the playoffs. We're trying to get to the Super Bowl. So that's our goal, and anything short of that, I guess we'll be disappointed again like we were last year.
Todd Bowles, head coach of the New York Jets, thank you so much for making time, and thank you so much for having First Take here. We love being here at your beautiful facility. We appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, Coach.
Best of luck this season.
Thank you.
All right.
Appreciate
More
it.
First Take after the break from Florham Park, New Jersey. It is beautiful out. The guys are out there working.